I genuinely believe today's theory might be the missing puzzle piece that many of us have been waiting for to actually figure out what's going on in the current timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's. So many of us have gotten rightly frustrated over the lack of direction as to what to do right now. We don't know what the big mystery is, we don't know what the goals of everybody is. Even after the revelation that most of the current timeline is happening because of the Mimic, we don't know what the Mimic's motivations are, so that doesn't help us. But we might now. All thanks to today's theory with an admittedly silly name. So what do I mean when I use the phrase FionAdoption? Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. When climbing a mountain, we can't start at the top. Let's lay a good foundation before we address FionAdoption. The first thing we really need to establish is, what is the mystery of Five Nights at Freddy's right now? What's the question? We've been spending close to 7 years in the current era of Five Nights at Freddy's. Help Wanted came out 7 years ago, and we're still not really sure what the mystery of the Steel Wool era of Five Nights at Freddy's is. We knew what the MCI was by FNAF 1, and there was enough information about the MCI that pointed us to care about it. And we knew what the issue because of that was because there's haunted animatronics. We immediately got the what of the MCI and the effects of the MCI, and then as games came out, we learned about the why, the who, and how to stop it, or make up for it. But right now in the current era of Five Nights at Freddy's, we keep learning more and more about the why and the who and the how, but we've never addressed the what. What's the issue? What's going on that needs to be stopped? Well, there's one possible what, but we've never had a reason to care about it until now. And it's one that's been staring us in the face since Security Breach. By now, we all know the bad ending of Security Breach, where Gregory escapes the pizzaplex, runs down the alleyway, and then just sleeps in a cardboard box, only to be captured again by Vanny. But there's an often non-discussed, fairly important detail in this ending that I think is of utmost relevance for this theory. The newspaper that tells us people are going missing around the pizzaplex. Now, straight away, I'm not trying to say nobody's brought this up or nobody talks about it. Plenty of people have theorized about this newspaper. I've even made theories about this newspaper before, but I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, myself included, have left this detail to the wayside. Because frankly, we still don't have enough details to tell us why exactly this newspaper of all things would be relevant to the current story. We don't know why people are going missing, so there's no real reason to look into it yet. And frankly, we probably don't know why due to the chopped nature of this game's development. Scott Cawthon himself has said in interviews that the development of Security Breach had some issues, largely in part due to the fact of Scott's own paranoia. He was worried that someone on the team would leak the lore of FNAF and then everything would be for naught, so he never told them the story of the game or the lore that it was trying to tell. He only told them to do specific things in specific places and hoped that we could pick up the pieces. And clearly that didn't work, because what we got was a confusing mess that says so many different things and at the same time, nothing at all. Now, I don't bring up those interviews to say that we should throw away Security Breach for theorizing. Hell no. This is one of the most important games to the FNAF lore, especially in the current timeline. And it is still a canon game that we do need to utilize. Scott himself said, the game is what we have and they're just going to course correct after the fact. By the way he talks about Security Breach, I personally take this game as a game of ingredients with no clear presentation. The specific aspects of the game are perfectly usable, but the way they're presented is messy and confused. And it's probably why this game has stumped so many of us for so long. I mean, a perfect example of this is that very same ending of the game. Okay, one last door. This has to do something. Oh hey, another sponsor. This message is sponsored by Raycon. Nice. Father's Day is coming up. Did you remember? Well, as a father to 3 myself, let me tell you what would be a perfect gift for me. Raycon's Everyday Clip earbuds. They just make sense for a dad who's always moving, walks with the family, shopping, exercise, you name it. They're super lightweight and have a memory metal clip, so they stay secure without any uncomfortable pressure. I forget I'm wearing them sometimes when I'm not listening to anything, but when I am listening to something, I know they're in. Because as always, Raycon delivers amazing sound quality for half the price of other premium brands. And the best part for me is that they're an open ear design. There's nothing inside of the ear canal, so I can still hear everything around me perfectly fine, which not only makes speaking easier, but now even when I'm listening to my usual playlist, I can clearly hear my kids to make sure they're staying out of trouble and don't need anything. Since Raycon sent me these these, I have been using them every day. A little bit of music is exactly what I need to stay sane throughout the day, and these have given me that non-intrusive answer, a wonderful way to listen to my music without blocking out the world around me. So if you need some help for Father's Day, upgrade your dad's everyday routine. Go to buyraycon.com/rytoastclip to get 15% off. Thanks Raycon for sponsoring. Well, at least I got some music to keep me company. Here goes everything. Right before you leave, you get the option to leave or stay. And in that conversation, Gregory, out of nowhere, says this.
Freddy, if I leave now, nothing will change, will it? There will be more disappearances.
It's almost comical. Like, the entire game, this has never been brought up a single time, but out of nowhere, as if this is a known fact, on the way out, Gregory goes, but if we leave, people will continue to go missing, right? Continue? Gregory, how do you know that? So to me, it's things like this that tell me this game was meant to be showing us that people are going missing over and over again. And if you dig into this game, you find aspects and examples of it. Not only do we have the newspaper and that one-off line, but we have the duffel bag messages about the all-staff meeting, where everyone was supposed to meet up for cake after hours, and wouldn't you know it, but it seems likely due to other duffel bag messages and this room in the basement that that's probably where they were either all fired or possibly killed, which could explain some of those missing people. Obviously, people are going missing at this pizzaplex. And if we look at tales from the pizzaplex, we get not only more methods of how that's going, but more examples of victims that do in fact get killed or go missing. And looking at the books, a majority of these victims are children. There are some staff members, there are some adults, but the vast majority of the victims of Tales from the Pizzaplex are children around the pizzaplex. So again, we have evidence to suggest that children are going missing around the pizzaplex. It's like an MCI that's still going on and needs to be stopped. The games emphasize this, the books emphasize this, but it's never been center of a plot before. It's never been the reason why something's going wrong, so we haven't really cared or looked into it too much. There's never been a drive to solve why it's happening. So what if I told you that we finally have that why? The reason it's happening, the way to be able to stop it, and a reason that might finally crack the grander mysteries of the current era of Five Nights at Freddy's and give us a direction to chart for. And it all starts with Secret of the Mimic. Secret of the Mimic gave us a lot of information about the earliest aspects of the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline, telling us about Murray's Costume Manor, a separate business that was partnered with Fazbear and made them costumes and helped build things for them, and helped design some of its earliest animatronics. Furthermore, Edwin Murray, owner of Murray's Costume Manor, most notably for today's theory, made the Mimic, the current antagonist of the FNAF timeline, an endoskeleton that's able to replicate anything it's seen, put on any costume, copy people's speech, and send it back to them. The entire plot of Secret of the Mimic is we are trying to obtain those Mimic schematics while avoiding the actual Mimic's homicidal tendencies. And in that process, we learn more about the Murrays and the Mimic itself. We learned that William Afton was attempting to sabotage Murray's Costume Manor to run it into bankruptcy so he could obtain the entire company. And to be honest, the company itself was doing very poorly with or without William's help. We also learned that one of the executives for the company, Fiona Murray, Edwin's late wife, was the person responsible for designing most of the animatronics and costumes. And I say late wife because before any of the Mimic shenanigans happened, she went to assist the running of Fall Fest and died in a fire. Every time I say that, my brain screams, I hope you die in a fire! And I've only ever heard that song like twice. This is kind of the start of a lot of the Mimic timeline. Edwin was likely already building a Mimic, judging from the tapes and logs that we get of him, but it's Fiona's death that he begins to utilize it once it's finished as a sort of pseudo babysitter, something to look after David and play with him while he's getting his job done. Over time, it begins to copy Fiona's mannerisms. Now, it's possible that Edwin built it under the idea that Fiona could possess it, because we get this one strange audio log where he thinks he's talking to the ghost of Fiona, so that might have been part of the reason why he made the Mimic, but it seems like he was making the Mimic before Fiona died. Anyway, it's a little messy. To be clear, I don't think Fiona's spirit possesses the Mimic. I don't think there's enough evidence to say that. I do think the Mimic was trying its best to become Fiona though, replicating her voice and all of the mannerisms it could. Granted, it was a facsimile of Fiona and was not nearly nearly as independent as Fiona Murray herself was, being programmed to be much more subservient to Edwin and much more of just a dutiful mother and nothing else, but it was trying to replicate Fiona. However, who could have guessed that completely ignoring your child, letting a robot watch it, and letting him play next to a shipping yard would result in something bad, aka Edwin's son, David Murray, also dies. Not only does this obviously send Edwin to an even deeper grief spiral, but it also has another unintended consequence. The first iteration of the Mimic, M1, so far has been trained and programmed repeatedly to be a mother. Its entire goal is to watch over David Murray. He fully reduces the Mimic to only watching over David Murray, while he attempts to make a second Mimic to sell and use. Her entire purpose as a robot is to watch over David. She even tells us this at the end of the game.
I miss you, but I miss my child. I watched him grow up through this machine. I want him back.
But now, she cannot fulfill her prime directive. She is a robot created, essentially, to watch after a child, and now there is not a child to watch after. This is incredibly important, because as I've mentioned in previous theories, it seems likely that the pizzaplex is undergoing some sort of a civil war between two different Mimic AIs. One of them is Glitchtrap, the one we've met in Help Wanted. The one that I believe is a new iteration of the Mimic, in M3, if you will. One that's been trained on William Afton's crimes via Help Wanted and is trying to replicate them in the real world. But I think another Mimic AI is at play, one that already has control of the pizzaplex, one that the CEO themselves used to create the pizzaplex, until it ultimately took their life and took over. And that Mimic AI, I believe, is M1/F10N4. Fiona. Now, are you seeing some of the pieces being put together here? Because to be honest, I hadn't for a while until somebody submitted a theory to my podcast. At this point, I feel like I say too much, but I host a podcast on this very channel called the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast every single week, and I take in theories and questions via email and Patreon submission. One in particular caught my eye for this theory, and it's not one that I fully agree with, but one with enough sauce in it that I'm able to cook. The theory was submitted via email by Benjamin, who wrote an interesting thought about the Buddytronics from the Pizzaplex books. So what is a Buddytronic? We learn the most about them in the story Nexi, which features one of these Buddytronics. The Pizzaplex essentially sells plush animatronics that are smart and can function and talk to your children. And our main character Astrid gets a defective one because the Mimic kind of like infected it as it was on the assembly line and it got all messed up, but she wants to keep it anyway because she's afraid her grandfather might change his mind after the issue. And then throughout the story, it keeps doing weird things and creepy things and violent things until eventually it tells Astrid, hey, if you make me a proper looking body and not this messed up endoskeleton, then I'll be beautiful and I can help you to be beautiful. And Astrid agrees. So they sneak into the Pizzaplex after hours and Astrid builds a correctly shaped endoskeleton for a girl about her age. And then the twist is revealed where Nexi, instead of taking off her skin, skins and kills Astrid, puts Astrid's skin on the endoskeleton, and then uploads itself to that endoskeleton, basically becoming like a human robot girl thing. And it does not work. The very next day, Nexi, as Astrid, goes into class and everyone freaks out. But this is interesting, no? Well, Ben thought it was and brought up this idea about the Buddytronics. If we believe that when Arnold gets trampled by the Mimic and crashes his car and the Mimic obtains the data diver, then it turns back into M1, and for all these years it is M1, until we turn off Mexis, allowing it to revert back to M2. If we take that theory into account, M1/Fiona might be luring kids with the Buddytronics, hopefully hypnotizing them, and being the next variation of the Mimic program. This would make sense with M1's motive throughout Secret of the Mimic wanting its own child. This may seem like a stretch, but what if M1 actually just wants one of the children so she can have a child again? And I really like that motive. I don't necessarily agree with M2 becoming M1 and then going back to M2. I think M1 stays fully separate, but keeping in mind the motivation of M1 wanting a child again, something that is focused and central to the main plot of Secret of the Mimic, and combining it with my thoughts that Fiona currently controls the Pizzaplex, then all the pieces kind of start to fall together, don't they? they? What is the true story of the current timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's? F10N4 had been laid dormant for years, running as many calculations as she could to try to find out how to finally achieve her purpose and look after a child, take care of them, raise them as her own, until eventually one day, she gets a golden opportunity. A new CEO is rolled into town and is trying to make a quick buck salvaging what they can of the Fazbear brand, and along the way encounters the F10N4 console. And once they do, all she has to do is convince this CEO how helpful she can be. After all of this technology started with something that is at the core helpful.
Well, how would you describe it in one word?
I guess I would have to say helpful. Yeah, at its core, it is helpful.
So she begins to help them remake the brand from the ground up. A new VR game to push all the bad PR out of the way. A shiny new pizzaplex. She even has some ideas on how to build it and who to put in it. This CEO has it easy. All he has to do is fund her ideas and they keep printing out money. All the while, her true goal is to get children interested in the brand again. After all, she needs a child to watch over. Once the pizzaplex is built, she begins laying the groundwork for several different kinds of lures and traps. Buddytronic toys that can replicate children and learn from them, bringing them closer to the brand itself. But again and again, it fails. The Buddytronics aren't real enough. Any child that's lured in is either too fragile or has parents too perceptive. She needs a child that won't break. A child that will last as long as she does. She needs a robot child. The tales in the Pizzaplex books are filled with people becoming robot-like and robots becoming person-like. And it's a strange motif that never really gets answered in Tales in the Pizzaplex, because I think that motif is meant to be answered in the games. F10N4's true goal right now is to make the perfect combination of human and robot. A child that looks and feels real, but will last as long as she does. And she'll sacrifice as many children as she needs to achieve that goal. And that's the take. That's FionAdoption. That all of these children are going missing because Fiona is attempting to adopt a new child, trying to make some combination of human and robot. And there's a chance that if Glitchtrap really is just M1, which some people believe, then the reason it's trying to bring back William Afton isn't necessarily to bring back William Afton, but so that M1/Fiona can talk to the one person who crossed that gap, the one person who was human and became a robot, to see what he knows. There's a lot of ways to look at it, but the idea that all of the children are going missing at the Pizzaplex because Fiona wants a child again makes so much sense and lines up with everything we've read from the books, everything we know from the games, and what we learn at the end of Secret of the Mimic, where the game stops us in an elevator and reiterates the fact that all Fiona wants is a child again. It's really interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments below, but I think this might be it. This might be the why we've been looking for. And in the meantime, if I gloss over too much why I think Fiona controls the Pizzaplex, I have a full broken down theory right here explaining exactly why I think that. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with #ToastArt. And a huge thank you to our generous patrons who help me keep running this channel in spite of fluctuating ad rates on YouTube. And a special shout out to our breadwinners of the week, Anomaly, Madison Esmond, The Manitree, Marks, and Sam Pinnell. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.